Well, good day, everyone. It's Mark Hale at Facepay. I appreciate you joining, and I have a special guest and good friend of mine, Craig O'Neill from Text Me. If you'd like to introduce yourself, you have a long career in automotive and number
Yeah.
you text me. So I'd love to hear about your background.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark, and thanks for having me. This is an honor to be able to talk with you, and I'll fully acknowledge we won't spend this entire time talking airplanes, but that is a topic I look forward to talking to you more with. So, my name is Craig O'Neill. I'm with Text Me. I've been with Text Me for 5 years, but my background actually comes from the automotive repair, and specific. My family business is a transmission shop. So I've done it all. Sweeping the floors as a teenager coming in, the R&R guy that was pulling the transmissions in and out, rebuilding. And then my favorite part of the job and least favorite part of the job some days was the front counter, working with the customers and learning to communicate effectively with them. So it's one of those family business things. You get to wear all the hats. I quit wearing the hats. I grew my hair out instead, Mark.
It's a smart move in customer interaction. It's hard, but wow, it's rewarding when you get it right and you can feel it, and you hit it. So I appreciate you joining today because
Oh, thank you.
we interact with a lot of shops. Our top performer last month was Jimmy Turner at Christian Brothers, right in Colorado, right? More in there with Text Me, and that's why I reached
Great.
because some confusion we talk because FacePay is heavily workflow based,
Yes.
right? Provide better interaction with the customers. And we started leaning on convenience. And then what I started to hear that I wanted to share with shops is they are starting to use DVI, right? It's impactful for customers. But then I noticed it's not part of a process. And process drives everything. And when we reached out, all of a sudden we realized there are some simple tips and tricks we can use to go beyond DVI, right? Let's incorporate in process, make for better customers. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Now, this is why I enjoy this conversation with you, Mark, with our topic being avoiding common workflow mistakes that result in lost opportunity. Like you mentioned, DVI, that's a key component to a lot of processes these days. Any of the top performing shops, this is something that a lot of people are very familiar with. Me and Chris, we asked this question at AST, how many shops are using that? And when you're at events like ASTE, that's the recent show in North Carolina. I like, it's like a mini Vision show. Anyone who's been to Vision in Kansas City knows how great that show is. ASTE is similar. You're dealing with top performing shops, and almost every hand went up in the room, except for just a couple who were already exploring adopting those things. And our topic was very much on not how to do inspections, but how to incorporate it into the workflow so that you can leverage them fully. And that is where the difference really is. So the workflow is a key component. And actually, Text Me, very briefly, workflow communication tool, first and foremost. There was a day before I even joined Text Me, so that's more than 5 years ago, where there was no DVI component inside of that tool.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a webinar you all had talking about how DVI is moving from a delighter into a half to half. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a key component we made in our conversation at ASTE. As you've seen this before, and we should, and you can tune into some of our webinars that we keep on our YouTube channel as well, where we talk about the Kano model. It's this customer delighter model. And delighters are important, right? Now, they aren't the be all end all, as we'll discuss in this conversation, but things that are delighting customers now always become must-haves over time. Chris Cloutier, our CEO, has done a wonderful job presenting that multiple avenues in the industry. I think it's an important topic.
And it's important to delight customers. What's interesting is that ATI Partner Showcase, and in my prep for that, I came across something very provocative. I don't know if we can see the slide. Right. Thank you. Right. And it's from this Harvard Business Review, right? To stop trying to delight your customers.
Right.
That's pretty provocative, right?
Yeah. I loved seeing this. The first time we looked at this together, it's like, oh, why stop? Oh, no, we want them to be happy, right? That's the first reaction you're going to have.
And that's the catalyst for having this webinar. I reached out where DVI pointed in. If I just took, customer delight, there's really some key point in here about what makes for customer delight. And for years, we know we had to collect reviews, put it on our website, right? Be able to interact with Google and other feeds to share our reviews for satisfaction surveys, right? And we all want quality service. What's interesting, over time diminished, and the top performing metric right now about your shop is the amount of effort that customers need to put in. And it's just so cliche right now, but we're all busy, right? And it takes effort for them to schedule an appointment. They got to call you and round robin to find a day and time to bring in a vehicle and pick it up, to understand its service. So much effort's expended, and it's 5 times the level of indicator of satisfaction over the service is their effort put in. That'd be a great place to start, because delight's key. But if we could go back and focus on effort, and I could see it, you have an immediate reaction to that.
I do. And because Mark, you've probably become aware of this too. When we start talking about effort at a shop, who's the first person that anyone wants to think of if you're in a shop and you're thinking about effort? The self, and it's the service advisor. And who's the shop owner worried about right now when we're talking about effort? And it's my technicians. Oh, I want them to do a DVI, but I can't get them to do that, and they're going to quit if I make them do something else. Service advisors can't put forth the effort to look at a screen, or maybe even a second screen of something else, because if it's not right in front of them, something that they can react to, they're so busy trying to react to so many things. Anything that even remotely suggests added effort will collapse. And this is workflow components. Like if that's how something feels, that's not anything flowing. That's just basically an obstacle, and that's how it's viewed. And once it's something you have to get a hurdle over, you lose your team's buy-in. And that's an implementation mistake. You're not going to get any action in a flow in your work unless you have the buy-in of all members of the team, and the business itself is oriented towards this.
And this is where we all talk about empathy, right? And it's really, can you truly put yourself in the minds of your customers, right? And what they need to do when you're so busy, right? What's interesting online, right? And I do my research, right? Service advisors are the auto shop punching bag, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's why I said it was my favorite and sometimes least favorite position.
Right. So, and what's interesting is the reason it gets that way is we're so focused on satisfaction and service, which we should be, right? And it's a given. You have to have quality service. But if we could think about efforts that your customers need to make, right? You spend our time there. A little bit goes a long way. And that's why, if we take Facepay ourselves, we focus a lot on that check-in, talk about pickup options, and understand, because most effort your customers are going to spend is picking up their vehicles. They don't know when it's going to be ready.
It is such a hassle. Yes.
You use the magic phrase that I want to touch on, right? So we're talking about the first part here in workflow is understanding customer effort. And you use this phrase, do it for me versus manage it for me.
Yes, it came from my coach, Bob Greenwood. He passed away last year unexpectedly and tragically. But this is something I learned from him. There's this do it for me approach, and it is very much how most repair shops function right now. Problem comes up, we call the shop and they're going to fix it for me, right? That's how this goes. Greenwood's approach was very much more about doing a comprehensive vehicle inspection. He used to ask us, I remember the first class I ever sat in, he asked the whole class, I'm sitting there in my hoodie sweatshirt. I'm sort of a technician / manager / well, I don't know what I was even at the time. I had too many roles going at once, and I'm in a business class instead of a technical class. And he asked, what's your job? Like, to the whole room. And I'm like, fix cars, right? This is like my job. I'm taking something that was broken and I'm fixing it for someone else. And that's the job as I saw it. No, Bob said, no, that is not the job. Your professional responsibility is to make sure the vehicle is safe, reliable, and efficient. That's the job. How can you do that unless you're doing a comprehensive vehicle inspection and can truly counsel and advise that customer on how to manage their vehicle the best? Like, manage their vehicle, like manage it for them is already starting to step in here. We didn't have a process set up for that, Mark. We didn't have a workflow that even remotely accommodate that. I was still a technician with the mindset that inspections were a gimmick. It's a sales tool. You aren't going to get me to do those. And that attitude is prevalent still in a lot more shops in this industry than we see at those trade conferences we mentioned earlier. I would argue that 90%.
And I'll share it. This is an aha moment for me, right? Because this is where what leads to, we all know that workflow yields higher dollar values, right, for repair orders, right?
Sure.
It's because you're managing against future problems. In the long run, it's going to save the customers money, and you're just choosing wisely how to invest it. And it's coming from an understanding.
Yes.
And there you go. Right.
No, we talked about this too previously, and it might be one of our slides here too on the ROI of as in specific, it's like DVI and the impact that we have on that. But when we look at this is not about the digital inspection nearly as much as it's about getting it worked into the process. I laugh when I hear people say, yeah, just doing digital inspection is going to net you a 20% ARO increase. And it's like, that's actually not scienced out at all. There's zero science on that. In fact, it's perhaps maybe you're checking something month to month, but just performing an inspection does not automatically magically create more revenue. Taking pictures doesn't automatically create more revenue. Now, a large...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say two topics I break up tickets. And when I'm looking at this with shops, I break it up into two very simple, easy to understand concepts. You have tickets that had viewed inspections, and you have tickets that do not have viewed inspections. And I picked that metric very specifically because if the customer doesn't view it, what good is it actually going to be on the impact for our sales? Viewership of inspections is therefore the key criteria. And when you look at viewed inspections or tickets with viewed inspections versus tickets that do not have viewed inspections, the numbers are absolutely staggering, far greater than 20%. I've seen this as high as 65 to 70% in some repair shops. I picked two conservative examples in this case, but that none or not viewed is a key thing. You'll see that on that DVI status. So if you take a second and study this, you'll see there's that none or not viewed. And that ticket could be just one that didn't get an inspection, or it did have an inspection, but it wasn't even sent to the customer. Very common when service advisors get busy. And then the third thing is that maybe you did send it, maybe you did do it, but the customer just didn't open it for some reason, which means your service advisor hasn't been trained appropriately to get that customer to open that inspection during the visit, or teach them that this is a valuable thing, or even leverage it in the sales conversation.
And this touches on the effort expended by service advisors, right? You're proactively, too often I see DVI tied to a jobs board, right? But should be tied to workflow. When do you present it to a customer? And
yes,
better, right? And you're getting your tech working, and then you can get the customers to understand what's going on. There's going to be fewer questions inbound the more you inform your customers.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like we talk payments too, but DVIs can be done the same sort of concept, right? If we surprise the customer with payment options at the end of the visit, they didn't have any expectation of what they were going to do. But what happens when you surprise them with a DVI? Like you didn't even tell them up front that this is something we're committed to doing in our business out of interest for their safety, reliability, and the efficiency of their vehicle, because we're going to help you make good decisions on this. However you explain this, right? If you just surprise them with this is what I've found most service advisors, a key mistake in workflow with inspections is advisors didn't set the expectation that this is something we're committed to doing in this business to your direct benefit. They're not even attaching to the benefit that this has for the customer, which is actually going to make, in your context of effort, less effort for them to understand the recommendations that we're going to be making in our estimate. When we throw electronic estimates at customers today, this is a new thing that is very popular question that we get. I see a lot of all-in-one shop management systems looking at a variety of ways to do this. You throw an electronic estimate at someone, they're going to authorize the work straight from this. And it works great in many cases, especially for simple things. But what if you have 15, 20 jobs on that estimate? And the amount of effort it takes the customer then to understand which one of those jobs is important, if it actually addresses their main concern or not, if it's optional, if it's something that I can do without, all these things. How much effort does it take for a customer to understand that? And how much, even if the electronic estimate is getting you what you want, they just authorize a whole bunch of things, Was that just them capitulating and saying, just deal with it, right?
And it's
Or something else.
And it's a leap from a customer bringing a problem to you and understanding what you're offering in that inspection that solves those problems, right? And knowing what it is and moving along in the repair process, right?
Absolutely.
I love what you just had in the slide. It's not the art of sending DVI, but it's advising with DVI.
Exactly.
Customer.
Yes.
And as a result, reduces service advisor effort and tech effort later in responding to that customer.
100%. No, we brought in this term to our ASTE class too, and you see it on the screen, client relating capability. And I'm going to emphasize something here. I made this client when I first discovered this term. It has always been used as customer relating capability. So if you look for client relating capability, you might not find it as easy as you search for customer relating capability, but I'm going to invoke Bob Greenwood, my coach, once again. There is a difference between customers and clients. And once you've developed a relationship, they're hopefully a client.
Share with me, what do you think the difference is between them?
Oh, between a customer and a client? Well, let's look at an example a shop can relate to, right? You have that guy that comes in for an oil change and he says, please don't look at it. That is a customer, Mark.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
Fair enough, right?
Yep. And so a client is someone that you can definitely communicate that essence of why we are doing this inspection. Like, Mr. Client, we do this because our job here is make sure the vehicle's safe, reliable, and efficient, right? And this is how we are going to be able to counsel you on this. All the stuff that goes into that. We can't do that without understanding the customer's use of the vehicle, understanding their need. There's all sorts of things that we need to get to here. And this all has to do with company orientation. You see, these are the components of client relating capability. You have to have a business that's oriented towards this. Can a quick lube place that's aimed at car count, only car count, how many cars they can cram in and bang out, are they going to be able to develop a relationship with their clients? Probably not very well, right? This is a busy place and there's hardly any time. Our people in those places are often order takers. They're not even really interested in some of those other components that would go into getting to understand the client. So the configuration and structure comes into it, and this is the workflow component, right? This is the key part of how we structure our company to be able to support what we say we're oriented towards. And this is where a lot of times the workflow simply is not in the bigger picture. If you want to have a meaningful relationship with your clients where you're managing their vehicle for them, but you've done nothing for training, staffing, supporting at any level, all of those behaviors, it's going to feel like you're just spinning your wheels on this. People won't be able to do these things. One example I had in my shop was when I first started trying to get inspections worked into our workflow. I had a service advisor who could not sell an inspection to save their lives. And yes, we sold them. They weren't a courtesy inspection, but I don't think that matters, Mark, because I have lots of shops that see courtesy inspections and they use those very effectively. But sometimes you have customers who decline those too. And that also points to a failure to sell the value of why we do the inspection. And we have to train people to overcome those objections and explain why it is in their best interest, truly their best interest to do it. And if we're making them face those choices too, I feel like we're adding effort on the customer. If that's something that they're communicating to you that they don't want you to do in your shop, they said, don't inspect my car. Why are they saying that? Because now they feel what? Like someone who's communicating that thinks you're just trying to sell me something, right? And that's going to take more effort on me to try to say no to these things.
And this is the interesting thing. When you give something free, it's treated as that now.
Oh, yeah.
They haven't understood the value of having this, right? And it
has to be communicated.
Had I known,
how can we communicate in a way that doesn't take effort for the customers? Where I was going with this, Mark, is my service advisor, first strategy he had a printed sheet of paper that had the inspection, the price, and a few notes on this on a sheet of paper. And he just put that right out on his counter, expected the customers to ask him for it. Never happened. No one once said, oh, hey, this looks interesting.
And you're touching a kind of mistake is, again, going back to is You need to get inspections because they're helpful in the service, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have to advise with it and get it to your customers. I love that you up leveled it in the clients, right? To help them understand the future services in their vehicle and they can do things now while it's in and help them out or be prepared in the future. That's what makes for a loyal customer.
It does. And it depends on how you're leveraging the inspections. If you're using it to just hit them with a whole bunch of red items all the time, are they going to feel like this was in their best interest? Probably not. A common mistake you would see in an inspection workflow is a failure to report on good items. Story on this recently with my mother's car. She's on the west side of Michigan on the coast, about an hour from here. So not having access to my shop, I can't look at her vehicle anymore. I insisted she take it to a place that does digital inspections. She called the shop. She was too far away from one of the local Christian Brothers over in Holland. She had about an hour drive to that one too, so she couldn't make it there. It would have been nice. Dave Barry's team would have taken good care of her. But the thing that I ran into was that she got an affirmative from the shop that said they do digital inspections. I said, great, Mom, just make sure they send that to me once they look at the car. Well, she went in for an appointment and then she left with their vehicle, and they said, and they had an invoice of the oil change and nothing else on it at all, except that they topped off some fluids. It's like, well, what was leaking? It's like, send me the results. They must have given you the results, right? They did not.
You didn't get any.
I had to call and ask. And the question, I wanted to be really nice to that service advisor. I really did, but I was getting nowhere. She was a bit rude. She was clearly in a hurry. And I didn't want to like be like a secret shopper type of things. I tried explaining what it is that I do for a living and that, hey, if you have some results, I would encourage any of my clients too, to send them no matter what, because what she told me, we didn't find anything wrong. That's why we didn't send it. So, well, send it to me now. Well, I can't. She couldn't because why? Man, they didn't even look at it.
I mean, there you go.
They didn't look at it. And that's all I'm thinking of now. And it's like, yeah, that's horrible. The amount of effort I had to take to even try to get to that point in a conversation is just for shame. And I think that owner, I would love to be able to talk to the owner of that other shop. I bet he'd like to know that oil change promotion that they were doing, where they should be doing some inspections on there too, looking for other opportunities, even just from the shop's perspective, right? Wasn't taking place, and they weren't even communicating it effectively.
You just made me think of it. So common. We interact with our customers and we talk to service advisors. Appreciate it is they understand they have the upsell role, right? They're the face of the shop, and we all mean upsell is something proactive and positive, right? These vehicles do need it, right?
Oh, if it's a necessary item, see, yeah, Bob Greenwood always tried to teach not to call that an upsell. Yeah, it's just items that need attention. Yeah. Yeah.
But too often what I hear is that items happens at the end when the customer's service is complete, and on the final invoice, they review with you everything else they found.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. That is a huge workflow failure.
They can't wait to get the car back and out of there, right? And that's what we talk about customer effort, and where payments, you take payments out, make it easier when you use Facepay. But when you're at the end there and you're finally presenting what you found in the process, it is a failure.
Have you ever heard somebody ask?
You said earlier, right?
Have you ever heard somebody ask, like, why didn't you mention this sooner? I would have asked you to take care of that today.
Exactly. Right?
I've heard that a number of times, and yet those service advisors are probably afraid of what. And we talked about this before, Mark, like a failure to remove bias in setting expectations is a very key workflow failure for that service advisor. I think would be the guilty party, and not to be too judgy on this, right? I've been there, right? We all have. Absolutely. But what we want is very likely different than what someone else wants. And if you assume things, you know the old adage on that.
Don't assume, right?
Yes.
Just and this all goes back to customer effort. And if we truly understand that and introduce things earlier, it makes it easier and more convenient for them, as well as for you. The process goes better. So you don't feel rushed when you have customers dropping off vehicles, others picking it up. And then you're trying to add items on the repair orders, right? So they can understand that for future work. You'd love it when it's in the shop. So I think the big thing, and this auto text me is a great product, right? And I mentioned,
I agree.
we get in a workflow, we introduce we call them share links in your product, and it's just
Yeah.
integrate. But
Well,
you
this is
integrate the way you manage customers. I think we have a workflow slide.
do. And this is when you can define a workflow like this too, and this is a very basic workflow. This is something I would actually typically start out anyone who's trying out the software on. And because it works for the majority of shops, and it's completely customizable. So you can add different statuses here and there, but this is the gist of a common repair shop experience. Would you agree? All those statuses in there. Yeah. So at the beginning of it, you have that check-in process, right? And when you have messaging built into these that supports every effort that you make, it's powerfully reinforced. Sometimes just the affirmation of reading an expectation out when they receive that text just affirms that this is a real thing and something even beyond just the spoken verbal words, right? So setting an expectation that check-in text goes out. Thanks for checking your car, and you can communicate with us here by text. When we begin inspecting your vehicle, you'll receive another update from us. Boom, that message would go out automatically when the vehicle hits this status. And sure enough, automation, right? Technician begins doing inspection. The inspection status automatically happens based on the technician's actions, sends another update to the customer. This is interesting for me, Mark, because a lot of service advisors, when you first show them this sort of thing, they start freaking out that a customer is going to get a text message right when they check the car, and then they also will receive another update when we start inspecting the vehicle. And you know what the service advisor asked me?
What's that?
What happens if it's like 4 hours later when we start inspecting their car? Well, what were you going to tell them?
But it's okay. They want to know it's been inspected, right? Versus several days later, you haven't heard anything.
Yeah, no. Have you ever been asked this question at the front counter? Did you guys look at the car? Oh man, that one killed me. But no, this is one of those things. When you have that text go out when they actually begin the inspection, even if it was delayed from that other expectation that maybe you did set or maybe you didn't set, this is a timely update. What happens if a customer has to call you to get an update? That's effort. And JD Power did study this. You mentioned a Christian Brothers shop. They're wonderful with the workflow. They have a very clear process on this stuff, and they've been kicking butt 3 years in a row now, top on the JD Power Awards Customer Experience Index. And what they drew to, I was sitting in a Nashville conference with AMRA, actually. There's probably about 40 different corporate level folks sitting in this meeting, listening to JD Power talk about why customer satisfaction was so high for that organization. And they literally, next slide, and I can't make this up. I'm sitting there with my sales rep, Chan Patel, and next slide, JD Power presenting, and it shows text updates key to client satisfaction. It's like, oh, we're like, yeah, someone else is talking about it for us. This is great. And it was, but they had the charts of other types of updates that customers do. If they have to call the shop, it's not that they were unhappy, but it was less. It was probably about a factor. I think it was 20 points less on that side. And we've used this in one of our webinars too. So if anyone's interested in that topic, they can look this up. But like you talked about in the beginning, the effort that it would take the customer to go and get it versus an automatic text update. It's easy for them to know where the car is at.
Versus having to look up a phone number and call and break away to go get that update at a time that you can get a hold of it.
Easier for the advisor too, is the other side of it. This actually reduces effort. The only time you get that fear of a service advisor is if they are, again, failing to set realistic expectations and are dropping their commitments. And that feels bad for us, but hopefully that should be an exception, not a common variable for the majority of your clients, right?
And this is important because today we're talking about mistakes, right? Mistake is setting expectation on service versus expectations on process.
Yes.
They understand what's coming and when. The customer is much better served, and the more you're proactive throughout it, and they understand what they're going to get, right? The service itself is done much better, right? So it's
Absolutely.
about process.
No, I came home pretty stressed out some days as a service advisor. I ran out of words by the time I was home, right? But the biggest frustration I would experience throughout the day is that darn phone ringing. We had a horrible ratio. I was one service advisor to, I think the worst that I had, it was about 4.5 to 7 texts. It's not a ratio that's very easy to do even in a 7-bay facility, even for a transmission shop where the repair cycle's like 3 days on average, right? And I was just exhausted all the time. And that exhaustion started to manifest itself in my conversation. I talked about that service advisor. I tried calling over the phone. She was rude, right? Is that her fault for being rude? Is she a bad person? No. God, I've been that guy. Have you ever had a customer call you and they're apologizing for interrupting you? It's like, hey, I'm sorry to bother you. Could I just get an update on my car? It's like, you're sorry to bother me.
You go check with the tech and I'll call you back.
Yeah.
Natural answer to that.
Oh, techs love that update conversation too.
And this was a catalyst. We just did our Delighter release and we completely redid our text to pay. Because with Matthew and I noticed when we were on calls with service advisors, so trying to show them the process around text to pay and where it fits in. And they're looking up their customers at the counter and the phone's ringing the whole time. So we went back and we completely re-engineered it. Where you can understand where text pay fits into your workflow. One screen, it's optimized, right? To make it so much easier for these service advisors. 3 things at once. We noticed that ourselves. We took that time and you finally get them on a Zoom demo. And we realized we don't need that. This should just fit right in and they understand.
Fit right in. Yes.
Right
or we have to redo our structure so it does.
And that's where we always go back to is workflow yields success, right? And that's where I've gotten to know you so well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's all about process.
No, in our question box here, I saw a comment from Chris Cotton here too, and not argumentative, but like just performing inspections in the process can have a substantial impact on up to $224 average repair order. He was saying, and I think this is great, and it's true. And I work with a lot of shops. They're trying to get from that $3 million gross point to the $5 million gross point. They're already cranking out wonderful inspections, and they know that the answer to get to that 3 to 5 million point is in the workflow entirely at that level. And it's amazing when they start focusing in on it, really getting the team clicking along and literally clicking in some cases, that makes a profound impact. And to see them achieving those numbers is just a remarkably rewarding part of my job.
Right. And I'll share with you part of my history, right? So I'm founder of Facepay, but as CTO of Demand Force back then, which is review management before there were reviews, right? We did a deal with Google back in 2007 to put reviews in, right? Back when people don't review auto shops. So it's interesting, right? Is what I learned at Demand Force is people wouldn't just do a review if you sent them an email. It's when you put them in a process where you scheduled online, confirmed online, you got the results of your appointment in auto shop, and then you sent out for review as part of a process, this workflow. Realize DVI, now you're following the same thing. It's not having the asset, it's now you're part of this process from check-in all the way to pickup. Right, that makes it work, and that's where you get higher DVI. And then when we higher AROs to DVI, right, you got to make it real, like you showed. And then with Facepay, right, you know, we're direct bank payment,
right?
Well, that's where we work best, as part of workflow. And that was this aha moment, is not being at the end, right? People, you look and you had various ways to do it, and you always go back, what's easy?
Like we were saying, it's kind of too late. Right?
Too late, right? Yeah. It's like getting your items, right? It's too late. Well, if you make it part of check-in and you're talking about how would you like to get your vehicle after hours, which I could express, I can have it waiting outside, and you talk to your customers about that. right? That's where we realize that now we can have accounts and you're better servicing their customer. They make payments more convenient part of workflow. So workflow has universal benefits for
Yeah.
service writers. It's an understanding, you put yourself in customer shoes, your workload can go down because you're being proactive. They understand the process, right? And that's where setting expectations comes in. So.
Oh yeah, and back to the effort point too. One of the things, like, if you were able to explain that to me 10 years ago, when I was still behind that counter, coming home late for dinner on so many occasions as a service writer because someone had to come in with their card, or even when we still took written checks, that was a major frustration. You wouldn't get out of there till 7 o'clock. We closed at 5:30, and that just drags on. So like, hey, we can help the customer effort there too. But again, like everything we do to help the customer doesn't necessarily equate to more effort for a service advisor. That's a win-win.
That is a win-win, right? And again, what's nice about service advisors we all interact with is understand the role of conveying the customer's quality service, right? Your shop will provide that, and then an opportunity to service it correctly, right? And you talked over and over about that, and you service correctly, and then the deal's higher tickets. It's ARO, right? But at the end, we're doing the right things for the vehicle for that customer.
Always.
There aren't other options right now. If you don't want that service done, it's hard to get a vehicle, either used or new, right? You need it done, and you can understand what it means to your lifetime, your vehicle to pay off. So
absolutely. Now, reporting on the good things too is like that makes you feel good. I see a lot of times, especially in an inspection portion of the workflow process. Again, this is such an important part of the process. So I go back to this all the time. This is where we really, our professional responsibility, make sure the vehicle is safe, reliable, efficient. I say it so many times because it's so important. If a technician, like in my mom's case too, identified that some things are very good on the car, that's extremely valuable information. For me, back in the day, when I was selling transmission work, and we were talking about this earlier, Mark, back in the day, it was $1,800 to $2,200 when I was first learning how to sell transmission work. Like that was the ballpark that everyone would ask for. And that's what we could give with a genuine expectation that it would probably cost that. I remember like 4T65Es, General Motors front wheel drive 4-speed that was in so many cars from basically 1998 till I think they retired in 2003. That was the first transmission that routinely rebuilt fully was around $3,000. And boy, you tell somebody back in around early mid 2000s that they had to spend $3,000 on a major repair on their car. The question we got was very simple. Is it worth fixing? And if you're the type of shop that only ever reports on bad things on a car, what's the customer's perspective of their vehicle?
Yeah. It's not a good vehicle.
Man,
right?
and cars weren't that expensive. I don't know what a new one was anymore. I'd have to look for sure, but 30,000 would have been probably a stretch for some of those vehicles to be a new car cost. And it was a little more obtainable to get another vehicle. So that option existed. Now, most people can't. One, the supply of cars is not there, and the cost of cars is tremendously higher. Not something I would want to stomach in order $6,000, $7,000 you see out of some transmission shops now. Staggering.
We see it routinely in our side because of the savings with direct.
Yeah, I'm sure you see it too. Yeah.
Multiple transmission repairs a month, right? In shops, and they all translate directly to profit lift. So they see it. But on this topic, I'll just share a phenomenal coach at ATI is Kim Hickey. Right. And I talked about this exact topic, and it's to your point, if all you do is present problems, it's like a money sink. Your shop now is connotated or associated with something problematic.
Mm-hmm.
You want to associate it with its quality. Your car is back in a timely fashion. It's convenient, the least effort, right? But Kim Hickey corrected me is, I talked about repairs, right? They're always unforeseen, inconvenient. And I said it always costs more than you think, right? Because we don't know, and we always think, oh, it can't be that much, right? And I said, all those are negative. And she came back with, you can solve that by correctly setting expectations, right? And I'll extend it even further. You set expectations about process, because you can offload a lot of this anxiety that's just happened, right? And talk about manage it for them. I'm going to offload that for you and manage it by advising with DVI.
Yes.
And now you help this customer out, right? And a common mistake is you leave the problems with them by just servicing the vehicle. But if you can truly manage the advising, it's wonderful for your customer, right? And the effort they put in.
Absolutely. No, when I had to get good at like selling comprehensive inspections, for me, like having the last name O'Neill, and that was on our business name too. A lot of times people would come in, they'd want to talk to me, they'd want to talk to my dad or my brother. And that was part of the thing. And that was always a challenge sometimes for our advisors up front, which is something we had to continually point to them. No, talk to so-and-so, they're wonderful. Right. But remember that advisor who couldn't sell inspections, like wouldn't do it. Like eventually he'd have to come get me. Sometimes the customer really just wanted to talk to an O'Neill. And so we go up front and I start the normal relation conversation. It's just that delighting conversation where, hey, how are you? How's the family? How's the kids? We know these people, they've been coming to the shop for years for other reasons. And basically I just worked it into that conversation over time. I started getting to that point where I could communicate how we're changing our structure here. And I would start working that into those types of situations where, hey, so-and-so, yeah, no, that's all great. We'd talk for about 5 or 7 minutes or so. And then I'd say, you know what? We have a new system that we're using. And I see we haven't done a comprehensive vehicle inspection yet on your Explorer. And they say, oh no, what's this? Tell me more. So, well, it's pretty cool. We do these digital pictures now and this and that and this and that. And it costs $180. It's an hour and a half labor, but here's what we do with that. Here's what we do with that, right? Yeah. We're going to identify anything on the vehicle that's not good, safe, reliable, or efficient, right? And we're going to take pictures of those items. We'll have notes, and we're going to help you map out when we should take care of these. So this helps us too, because kind of fills some peaks and valleys of our schedule. Because when we know what's coming and what's necessary on this vehicle, we can help you schedule advantageously. So we can give you a better deal on this, right? And you're not going to be surprised either with those peaks and valleys in your budget when you have that family trip to Florida coming up here later on in the winter. We're in Michigan, right? So that's where we go.
Repaired, right?
So there's a win-win for them as well. And obviously there's a win for the business as well. And this is key because part of any good orientation or structure or workflow is that it has to benefit the people that are working. In fact, you could prioritize it the other way around, where first and foremost, it really does need to benefit your technicians, your service writers, and everyone else. Mm-hmm. If they succeed, if we're able to sell more service, if we're able to be more efficient, the business bottom line improves. Mm-hmm. If the business bottom line improves, the personal incomes of everybody in the business improves. Since we're also doing a favor for our clients at the same time, win, win, win. These things don't exist very often, but it is absolutely something that can be created in your shop.
And this is the part you just said, win, 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 right? And I think about myself as a manager at Facepay, right? Is when you have a team and you get everybody aligned to the same goal, right? And if you'd ask them a tech, he doesn't want to do the quick repair. He wants the vehicle done right. That's why we're in the business, right? The service advisor, they love happy customers, but they love the fact that the vehicle is being done the way they should, because their customer will be happier, right? Repair, right? And then again, going back to customer, your client is much happier, right? And this is what builds loyalty. They'll keep coming back, right?
Oh, absolutely.
There you go.
We were going through a transition in our shop as well. We didn't want to just be a transmission shop, and we were becoming a general repair facility. It's not our fault. First general repair shop started putting boxed units into people's cars. So we had no choice, folks. Right? But becoming general repair was a fascinating time, because you know what, we went before we had the process nailed down. I heard the worst thing from my clients, happy clients at the end of the ticket. They paid their money. They were taking their keys. They said, hey, best I've ever felt about spending $3,000 in a place. You guys have been wonderful, but I hope I never see you again. Mm-hmm. Oh no. I obviously understand the sentiment, but it is absolutely something we did want them to be able to do with us. And it was really highlighting something that we had to change in our process of how we communicated things and what expectation we could set later on in that visit. So, or outside of that visit, I should say.
And this is, the way you hear people talking about now, right, is there's an expectation, right, when you go and look for an auto repair shop or transmission shop, that they can complete that service, right?
Yeah, it's a must have, right? If you can't fix a car, they're probably not even calling you. They don't assume you can't.
Right? We all have that, and that's where you set expectation on service. You set it around your customer, right? And managing their effort to come in, right, and get a vehicle that works the way it should for them, back to safe, reliable, and efficient, right? That's the customers keep coming back. And that's when I pulled out the customer effort score and learned about it. And that's where we're well beyond, oh, thank you for servicing, I'll complete your review, it's a good one, into, boy, what is my effort, and do I understand it?
Yeah, it's really profound.
That's a true component about how you're interacting with the shop, should measure yourself.
Because what you're saying, I think this is, as I understand it, is like, it's not exactly a delighter to get back the same car that you had. It's just working the way it's supposed to always work, right? That's my expectation, is getting point A to point B. We have this assumption of good function in our vehicles, right? Mm-hmm. This is, in fact, it's more jarring than anything else that something went wrong, because there's this moment of disbelief, like, oh my goodness, this is happening to me, right? So getting the vehicle back is just restoring the norm. Mm-hmm. They aren't delighted with that. But if you've done it in such a way that you took them through, for them, what is truly a crisis of their schedule, their week, whatever, with such minimal effort that it was a blip, that's great. Maybe not on their budget book, but
you go on your vacation, or you have a car for work, or you need to go somewhere on the weekend, you got it, right? So.
Oh, absolutely.
Craig, as always, every time we interact, I learn from you, right? And
we haven't worked in the aviation stuff yet, Mark.
My get was just in its annual, right? You talk about inspection, right?
So good. Perfect segue.
Costing twice as much. It's required annually, but the more I understood and knew, I never give up safety, right? And the minute I know what it is, I'm all for it. Let's get it done, right? But talk about the importance of inspections early. They'll do it right away, and the time it takes to get it done. So it's safety, reliable, and efficient. And efficient is important. And my aircraft every year, get it done. I just got it back, and it's gonna be a great weekend, right? So
yeah. Your weather must be nicer than ours, but yes.
It is. So. Again, going back to, we talk about common mistakes, right? And that's, if I just go through some I jotted down, right?
Yeah.
Opportunity for you. It's being able to understand your customers' effort ahead of yourselves, right? And that's what's going to drive the impact of your shop and your own expenditures you need to do in service.
Yeah, this is manifest in a lot of workflows initially too, Mark. I see a lot of workflows that they're either focused on one or the other, internal or external type of communication. A true good workflow is actually going to do both. There are, like, even an auto text me, people think every status is going to send a text message update. No, that's not the case at all. You get to turn that on or off for key statuses that actually are important to do as an external piece of communication. There are statuses that are purely internal that your team will look at. One of the workflow examples I like to make too is, I get this question a lot, is like how we notify technicians that work is assigned or that we need them to move from one thing to another. And I'm sorry, but notifications on technicians, taboo in my book. My wife knew. I even had my phone on my toolbox. Like, I would hear stuff, I would get stuff. And it's nice when I get to a stopping point on something I'm working on with 30 hands and everything else. Back in those days as a tech, it was wonderful to go to my phone at the right time and see some pictures of my kids at the park with my wife. And it's like, I can struggle through this vehicle now on this wet, drippy day or whatever. Right? But I don't go to this device every time it beeps, chimes, whistles, vibrates, or any other thing. Notifications. There's a really good book Chris mentioned. Chris is a reader in our company. He's always throwing book recommendations at us and love it. The one of them was, I have to think of it. It's the author was making a key point that notifications should only ever be made if they involves something you can do something about right now. If you can't do something about it right now, that it shouldn't be a notification. And that's like, okay, yes. So this makes sense, because you interrupt a technician, what do you get?
Distracted. Right?
Oh man, you name it, right? This is where serious mistakes come in. You interrupt a service advisor, what do you get? And I think about estimates. You interrupt them while they're building an estimate, and that they've got to keep a certain mental process there to get through everything there. You think customers think we charge them for things that they don't need. That is not the case. More often than not, we don't charge them for things we should have. And it's a distracted advisor. So notifications aren't something there. That workflow exists so that we know where we're at any point in time. I like baseball analogies for this, because when you're a base fielder out there and that ball is going to come to you, if you got runners on whatever base, you know exactly what behavior you're going to interact with if that ball comes to you, or if that ball goes to him, or if that ball goes to him. And that ability is trained into those baseball athletes so well that is why you see those amazing double plays when things happen. It's because they already precognated exactly what to do in that circumstance. So when you get done doing something, you look at and see where you're at on that workflow. I know exactly where I need to go next. No one need to tell me anything, no internal chat, no notifications whatsoever.
This comes back to setting expectations on process, right? Your workflow. Right. And people understand where it is. You always go back to it and let it guide your shop. So amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. When you get your whole team involved in that, a lot of people also liken it. You like sports analogies, right? So you go with the relay race. So workflow should be like that too. There's key areas of responsibility for certain staff members. And once you understand where your realm of responsibility is, if things are laid out in any form of prioritization, very, very easy to work through your day. My dad had a really good quote that I grew up hearing all the time. He mentioned it to every service advisor that ever worked for our shop, self included. He said, technicians work better when they are preloaded. And it is so true. If a technician understands what he's doing next and next and next, their time management is remarkable. The tools that they keep organized for the next job and the next job and the next job, and they move so quickly between it, you aren't wasting time racking 3 different cars, pushing them in and out and all that other stuff. Beautiful.
I love this conversation, because let's continue to work together to help service advisors be preloaded, right? Yeah. All of this, and you get it, when their phone rings, they're answering it, but they just got distracted from something else, right? In a positive way, right? You should be on your customer. Well, I hope you understand where you are and get preloaded, and I'll appreciate that through today. And let's work together on that. It's a great outcome of today's webinar. So.
Yeah. Careful preloading your service advisors though, right? You can only take so much.
Right. Not over. Right? Help them know what they have to do and check, done, right?
Oh yeah. No, it's a tough position.
Not overload, right? It is a tough position, right? We care. So
yep.
Craig, as we close here, just great insight so far. Do you have any closing thoughts or comments you'd like to have? I appreciate you coming in. DVI, I learned was important, and it's much more than that, beyond it. And I think having today nailed it, right? And a lot of useful information. And any parting thoughts here to help everyone?
Actually, I love this week because I get to talk to you. And then tomorrow I'm hosting a webinar with Dan Malloy from Malloy Business Development Group, who has some amazing points. And Mark, I was telling you a little bit about this. I think you would get along with him very quickly. He has this topic of commitment-based communication, the language of commitment. And he's an author himself. And I think it's just going to be a really worthwhile topic. My email's on there if you need any information on that upcoming talk, or you find this sort of thing interesting.
For that webinar, where would we go?
So we would be able to, if you follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn, you'll see our post here too. But yeah, if you pop me an email, it'll be there. I don't know that we have it hosted on our website and other places, but it will be posted on our YouTube channel once that's been completed. And there's a list of other webinars there as well. We talk workflow quite a bit. And I think there's some really good ones in there that'll.
I heard about. I'll be there tomorrow, right?
Nice.
Yeah, it's always a learning, and process is everything. And Craig, thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark. This has been a pleasure.
Same here. Always love it. Next time we'll talk airplane. So
Okay.
just a webinar and that, and it's all auto all the time, and just we have a lot of mutual great customers. It just
Absolutely.
gives so much insight in how well-run shops run, and how
Top
you
1%. I feel like we work with them every day, right?
go and
Beautiful.
where we have, and thank them for attending today.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, have a great day, and a great day for everyone. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.